Let me see. Hmm. Here we go. There we go. There we go. Here we are. I know. I need to turn this off. It's too much. Okay. What else? Are you on? Yeah, of course you are, my baby boy. There's this stuff. So we were in the introduction. The stream went to poo, and I had to restart it. I wish that I could make sure my mic wouldn't be so crickly crackly, spiggly spackly, but you know, yeah, spiggly, biggly, biggly. Um, ooh, I wonder if this will help. We may never know. Um, well, 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 well. I don't know. I thought that sounded better. I hope it came across as better. Who knows? Ugh, knows. Anyways, I'm gonna do this. Pop. It resulted in a 106% increase in cyber tip line reports of suspected child sexual exploitation in just 1 year. That was during the pandemic. My point, while Jeffrey Epstein is dead and gone, there are many others around the world who are still committing the same kinds of crimes that he did. There are countless victims of sex trafficking who have not yet escaped their exploitative situations, as I was fortunate enough to do. Those girls and boys and women and men will likely attempt to flee between 3 and 7 times before they succeed, according to recent research. Many of them will not be offered help by a single caring stranger. In America, where only 4% of law enforcement agencies have personnel dedicated to exposing human trafficking, most victims must rely on their own wits and on luck to survive. I want to change that. I want to not just hold abusers accountable, but also to challenge the ways that all too often our legal system protects those abusers. It is estimated that most victims of childhood sexual abuse don't come forward and share their experiences until they are in their 40s or later. In my view, survivors of sex trafficking and abuse should be able to seek justice whenever they are ready to do so. But many states have an idea. Wish I could better manage. I wonder if there's a different app for it. But Alrighty, let's try this again. In my view, survivors of sex trafficking and abuse should be able to seek justice whenever they are ready to do so, but many states have statutes of limitations that make that impossible. These are systemic problems that no single person can solve, which is why it's so important for survivors to unite. As I said in that NBC interview in Paris in 2021, no matter how weak survivors of sexual abuse are made to feel, we will always be stronger when we work together. In recent years, bits and pieces of my story have been told and retold by others in countless books, podcasts, interviews, articles, movies, miniseries, and televised specials. But until now, I have never told my whole story. Doing so allows me to fill in the gaps, to provide context where it had been sorely lacking, and in key places to set the record straight. Young girls and boys, too, don't end up being sexually trafficked and in a vacuum. Serial sexual abuse doesn't happen to them, to us, out of the blue, and in many cases we are first abandoned by those who claim to love us. By describing my history, I hope to help others prevent it from being repeated. Nobody experiences extreme trauma and emerges unscathed. I certainly haven't. Even before I met Epstein, I experienced awful things that made some observers label me his perfect victim. But I was also resilient, or I wouldn't be here now. I still have night terrors and panic attacks. I still have moments of feeling worthless. Perhaps I always will. But on many days, especially when I've been able to help another survivor, I thrive. My hope is that this book can aim some light at the darkness and force it to crawl back into its cave. Once I was silent, but now I have found my voice. This book is a result of that metamorphosis, because my husband is right about me. I am a warrior with a story to tell. Part 1, Daughter. Do you know why this world is as bad as it is? It is because people think only about their own business and won't trouble themselves to stand up for the oppressed, nor bring the wrongdoers to light. My doctrine is this, that if we see cruelty or wrong we have the power to stop and do nothing, we make ourselves sharers in the guilt. Anna Sewell, Black Beauty. That's a good one. Oh boy. And then, yeah, so that was the first of the, that was just the intro. Of course she's talking about her husband and being together with him for at that. Part 3, survive. Ooh, there's picture. Yeah, these pictures in the middle. Okay. So, yeah, of course I'll show those when I get to those. But I don't know if I'm gonna read out the whole book. Just read the whole book. So, but I am tempted. It's really just fucked me up. But yeah. hmm It's just yeah. This feels like I said earlier. I put on Lord of the Rings music to like really lock in and focus up here and read and take notes. Um, I don't know. I guess I used it. I kind of misplaced my other uh, video energy into this. That just happens so much. So But I'm just gonna do this real quick and then we can read the next chapter. Chapter 1, Baby. Picture a girl sitting alone on a curb, her face stained with tears. She's 15, but so skinny she appears even younger. She could be pretty with her blue eyes and long blonde hair, but her freckled face is swollen. Her throat is bruised, and in her mouth is a taste she will never forget. Gunmetal. Bleeding from places she didn't know she could bleed. This girl has been hurt before, but not like this. A gust of wind makes the palm trees above her shudder. She wipes her bloody lip. What would it be like, she wonders, to matter? Then she sees a stretch limousine as it glides toward her, black and shiny. The girl catches a glimpse of the driver behind the wheel. Her mind flashes on the limo in Disney's 101 Dalmatians, the one that Cruella de Vil drives around London, looking for puppies to skin. How many times has she watched that movie? But this isn't a scene from a cartoon. That's kid stuff, and this girl hasn't felt like a kid in years. This is real life in Miami, Florida, and the girl is me. Busting out of the juvenile detention city in Palm Beach County 48 hours earlier, I'd been so full of hope. I knew from experience that I needed to ditch my juvie uniform, a navy polo and khakis, or the cops would pick me up right away. So my first stop had been a Marshall's discount store, where I quickly changed into a new t-shirt and jeans and made a show of returning my prison-issue garb neatly hung on a hanger to a rack. Then I exited the store without paying and headed straight for Delray Beach. I've always been good at talking to strangers. On the sand, I met a stoner dude, way older than me, but with mellow energy. He was smoking a joint, which he offered to share as we looked out at the Atlantic. When I told him I planned to sleep outside that night, he said I could crash on his couch. I was worried that he wanted sex, but I was wrong. When we got to his place, we just smoked some more pot, and then he found me a clean towel so I could take a shower. Please be gone by morning, he said before he went to bed. I go to work early, and please don't fuck up my house. Do the right thing. Not all men are monsters. The next morning before dawn, I did the right thing, pulling the front door shut with a quiet click. Then I headed for the train station where I took most of the money I had, a $20 bill I panhandled from a gas station attendant, out of my ponytail scrunchie where I'd hidden it. This sounds really cool. She hid the $20 in her scrunchie. That's smart. And bought a one-way ticket to Miami. An hour and a half later, I arrived at Miami-Dade Station, 50 miles south of Palm Beach. I'd run away dozens of times before, but I'd never made it this far. From the station, I headed east on foot, figuring I was about an hour's walk from the ocean. Right away, I saw the pink and orange glow of Dunkin' Donuts up ahead. Back home in Loxahatchee, I'd often begged for change outside the local Dunkin', so the sight of this logo, a cheerful seeming coffee cup, felt like a good omen. I went inside and mhm. I went inside. Where am I? Why? What? Yes. Inside and bought two of my favorite chocolate top donuts. With food in my stomach for the first time in days, I walked out feeling confident. I had no place to go, but I would figure it out somehow. I must have been walking around for about 20 minutes and a white van pulled over just ahead of me. Need a lift? The driver asked, sounding friendly. I'm going your way. Maybe it was the sugar high, but my guard was down. Besides, it was hot and humid, and the dark-haired driver looked like a skinny shrimp, bigger than me, but not by much. I got in and I buckled up. The driver glanced at me, then back at the road. He was probably in his late 30s and dressed as if he worked construction. I need to make one quick stop, he said. He owed someone money, he said. Needed to pay them back. That's cool, I replied in a voice I hope sounded tough. The van turned west, away from the water, then parked in front of a seedy-looking motel. Come upstairs with me. It'll only take a sec. I followed him up and then through the door into a dingy, worn-out room. He was on me immediately, and I knew right away I had underestimated his strength. He overpowered me and held me down on the bed, one hand around my neck, and then pulled a gun and put its muzzle into my mouth. He raped me from the front first, and then from the back. The only lubrication was the saliva he spit into his palm. He choked me until I lost consciousness, then let me breathe, then choked me again. I imagined myself dead, dumped in a ditch, and then a miracle, the man's cell phone rang. He released me so he could answer it. Stay here, my attacker told me. Try to leave and I'll find you and kill you. Then he turned back to his phone and stepped outside. I suspected he was going to kill me either way, so I waited until I couldn't hear his voice anymore. Then I ran. That's how I became this tear-stained girl sitting on a curb in an empty beach parking lot. It was dusk when I see the limousine slow to a stop in front of me. The tinted rear passenger turns and uh, hums as it opens, revealing the pasty face of a stranger in his 60s. He is heavy-set, balding. I watch his eyes as they roam over my swollen, bruised face and battered body. Oh, you poor baby, the old man says. His concern sounds genuine. Peering into the car, I see a pretty girl in a short red dress sitting next to him. She smiles at me. The old man wears black slacks and a collared shirt. The men in my family tend toward blue jeans or coveralls. I hope this stranger is different from them in other ways, too. Come in here so we can take care of you, the old man says, as the girl nods encouragement. I think of my attacker driving around in his white van, his gun in his lap, searching for the girl who got away. I stand up, wobbly. The limo door opens, and the old man slides over to make room for me. The old man tells the limo driver where to go, then introduces himself. Ron Eppinger. He runs a modeling agency called Perfect 10. He gestures towards Yana, the girl next to him, who's from the Czech Republic. Would I like to become a model like her? He asks me how old I am, and at first I say 16 because it sounds better to me, less vulnerable. Eppinger shakes his head. He isn't buying it, so I tell him the truth, that I'm 15, which seems to please him. As long as you never lie to me again, I will take you in. He says, what does that mean? He says, what does that mean? I think, but don't ask out loud. He says, Then Eppinger Fleshy's face turns sad. He had a daughter once, he says, Susan Marie. She died when she was 15, and the driver of the truck she was riding in fell asleep and crashed into a utility pole in Pompano Beach. Eppinger has never gotten over it. He tells me, and for a moment I feel sorry for him. That's when he reaches for me and strokes my hair. If you want, Eppinger says, I can be your new daddy. How quickly he does that, twisting the father-daughter bond into something sickening. But I already know that trick, and I want to believe it doesn't work on me anymore. I don't trust parents, especially fathers. I don't need a daddy, old or new. I just want to break from fending for myself. When you grow up female, danger is everywhere. I've known that for as long as I can remember. Just hours ago, the construction worker in the white van showed me a darker side of evil. I know I can't go home again. There's no safety there. My whole body aches inside and out. I have no good options. The old man, the model, and I order takeout from some oceanfront sand. As we eat, I scarf mine down like an animal. We listen to the waves. Then Eppinger says he wants to take me shopping. We go to a nearby Gap Kids, and he steers me towards short shorts that don't cover my backside and tops that are all way too small. From the look on the saleswoman's face, it's easy to tell what she's thinking. This isn't what most grandfathers buy their granddaughters. Next, we go to a lingerie store where Eppinger takes some, seems to be irregular. He picks out G-strings and other lacy things that I've only seen grown women wear in the movies. He holds them up to my newly developed body, leering. Finally, he tells the chauffeur to take us home. Inside his huge apartment in Key Biscayne is with its sweeping views of Miami across the Rickenbacker Causeway. Eppinger introduces me, with a wave of his hand, to 5 other girls, most of them wearing underwear or nothing at all. Dun, dun, dun. Uh-huh. Yeah, only or nothing at all. Only a few speak English. Then he takes me to a back room, his room. There's a circular bed and a mirrored ceiling. I ask, where can I sleep? He said, with me, he says. Part of me feels a familiar dread. Is it too late to get away? But another, bigger part remembers how life was in rehab and in foster care, and worst of all, on the run. Maybe this is the way all men behave, and I'm tired. I want to feel nothing. The old man calls me baby. I'm the youngest girl there, so the nickname sort of fits. I want to become someone new so badly that I accept it. Baby is now who I am. It's breakfast time, and my kids, ages 11, 14, and 15, are tearing around the house, almost late for school. At the sunny end of our kitchen island, I sip a perfect cup of coffee, cherishing the chaos. My husband, Robbie, hands out the lunches he's packed, 3 healthy snacks and one oversized sandwich. Robbie's family is from Sicily, and his Italian subs are hard to beat. My job is to confirm that everyone has their homework, their permission slips, their gi uniforms for their after-school martial arts classes. As Robbie herds them toward the car, I hug my daughter and 2 sons tight, ignoring how they wriggle to get free. Hurry up, Robbie yells. That bell is about to ring. Then impulsively I decide I want to come too. Though I'm still in my pajamas, I jump in the front passenger seat as Robbie opens our electric security gate, and I marvel that this is my life. Later, I'll take a Pilates class and make a coq au vin for dinner, give giving Robbie, our family's primary chef, a well-deserved night off. But first, I must return to the job of examining what came before. It's no fun, this task I've assigned myself, but it is necessary. Would it be easier to spend my waking hours walking on the beach with Juno, my French bulldog, or taking my daughter Ellie shopping for earrings, or getting ready to overdecorate our house for Christmas? My husband complains every year, but I can't help but go overboard on Christmas. Yes, it would be easier. And I do all those things too. But it's finally time, I've decided, to put all the puzzle pieces of my life together. I couldn't do that as a child, which is part of the story. Children don't have the luxury of that kind of reflection, especially if they are in bad situations as I was. They must focus all their energies on simply trying to survive. In the present, my life is organized around 2 things: my devotion to my husband and children, and my determination to hold my abusers accountable. Start in the here and now, describing the gratitude I feel as I arrange Santa Claus figurines, say, or shiny strands of tinsel. But my past demands an audience. It has been hidden for too long. So, how did I end up in Miami penniless, battered, and alone at the age of 15? There are so many answers to that question, but if you asked me in 1998, unpacking all of them would have hurt too much. Instead, I would have offered the shortest explanation. I ran away. I would have said, I ran away from growing together. Growing together. It was a tough love treatment center. Okay, so right before I get into chapter 2, I want to I want to add to my notes of, 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 of this. Ah, I need to, so that was all. God, I hate these sounds on the browser. I need to fix that. Um, I want the name of the guy in the car. It was bum, 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 bum. Ron Eppinger. Maybe that's stuck during this period. I did mean during finger. Paris. Fix that. No, that's what I meant. What else? And she ran away and stuff. She ran away from the treatment centers where she ran away from. So growing together is okay. Okay. The chapters are also just so short. It's really not hard to like keep it all together, I guess. Um, so mhm, mhm, mm. I am wearing pants. YouTube also YouTube. I am wearing pants. They are pajama shorts though, so I gotta make sure they are pants. Okay. 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 Where am I? That was a lot, but it was necessary to read the first chapter, obviously, duh. Hmm. Try and share my life a little bit here. Try and share my life. Oof. I can hear my own voice echoing back. That's fun. Well, no, I was trying to say share this stupid copy link. Stupid. I bonk it. Okay, here. Okay. I'm about to start chapter 2. Okay. Okay. Chapter 2 is growing together, which is, it sounds like the facility that she ran away from before. In chapter 2. It's growing together marked itself as a tough love treatment center, but the truth was that it left the love out of it. By the time I took a seat in Ebbinger's limo, I'd been trying to escape for nearly a year. I hadn't volunteered to become a Growing Together client. My mother, Lynn, tricked me, saying we were going to the eye doctor. Instead, when we entered the tall, blue intake building about 20 miles from my family's 1.25 acre farm in Loxahatchee, Florida, I found myself surrounded by uniformed men holding clipboards and a few muzzled guards. Mom ducked out. I could still recall what she looked like walking away, for even from the back I'd know her fiery red hair anywhere. My mother had recently declared me out of control, which was basically true. Once an enthusiastic reader and hardworking student, I had become an angry truant, defiant, and prone to emotional meltdowns. Whenever I could, I hung out with older kids, drinking and partying, and there was hardly a drug I hadn't taken. So, yes, Mom, you were right that as a young teen, I was a rebellious mess. I just wish you'd asked me why. Growing Together's banana yellow building sat just south of West Palm Beach in a town called Lake Worth. That was funny to me, since it seemed that the facility was determined to make the 30 or so teenagers enrolled there feel worthless. In the name of healing, Growing Together staff forced kids between the ages of 13 and 17 to stand in front of the mirror and berate themselves at the top of their lungs. I'm a horse, a slut, a druggie, we girls would yell, staring into our own eyes. We had no choice but to comply. This, we, the place was like a fortress with security guards and barred windows, and as we call a special cell, the White Room, where staff sent us when we fought back. Eventually, I would spend a lot of time in the White Room, which had no toilet, no mattress, only a cold concrete floor coated in the filth previous occupants had left behind. My longest stretch in solitary confinement was 3 weeks, but that came later. At the beginning of my time there, I tried to give Growing Together a chance. During the day in group therapy sessions, I opened up a bit to the counselors. I told them about how when my mom was drinking, um, it was as if she became another person. And one moment she'd be laughing, and the next she'd be yelling. She threw things, coffee cups, cold macaroni and cheese at me and my little brother, Skydie, who was 5 years younger and whom I adored. But Skydie was just caught in the crossfire. I was the one Mom always seemed furious at. She'd get this look in her blue eyes. Skydie called it, and I called it, the evil eye. That felt as if it could pierce your skin. When she was really angry, she'd send me out to the yard to cut a thorny branch from one of her prized rose bushes. Pick a switch, she'd say. When she was really angry, she'd send me out to the yard to cut a thorny branch from one of her prized rose bushes. Pick a switch, she'd say. Then she'd make me pull down my pants in front of the neighbors and anyone else who was around so she could whip me with it. At Growing Together, I began to talk about these painful things, removing a few bricks from the psychic wall I'd built around myself. I told staff about the time just months before where two boys, one 17 and the other 18, assaulted me in the back of a car while I was unconscious. We'd been drinking and smoking pot before I passed out, but I awoke to find them taking turns on top of me. I would never forget how their giddy voices or how hot and sour each boy's breath felt on my face. In all, I said the ordeal had lasted 5 to 7 hours. Talking about all this with the counselors at Growing Together was difficult, but it gave me something I hadn't expected, the first stirrings of relief. That reprieve wouldn't last, though. Not for nothing, Growing Together eventually would be dubbed suffering together. In an expose in New Times, an alternative weekly newspaper that was a sister publication of The Village Voice. In December 2004, years after I had entered Growing Together, this article would report that for years, kids there had endured beatings, restraint, imprisonment, and systemic humiliation. The piece identified families that had sued Growing Together for hurting, not helping, their children. It described a girl whose arm had been broken by a counselor, a boy who'd attempted suicide but was never referred to a psychologist. One mother called the program a concentration camp for clients and parents. The article also noted that the nonprofit facility raked in roughly $1 million a year in donations and fees, typically $14,000 a year per client paid by the parents of drug-addicted kids, some of whom were ordered by judges to attend. I'm not sure who paid to put me there since my parents had no money. 18 months after the New Times piece ran, the place closed for good. But for 2 decades, it was a miserable hellhole for kids like me. Growing Together's treatment model was a JV version of Alcoholics Anonymous with 6 steps instead of 12. But unlike AA, protocol depended on pitting kids one against another as we attempted to move between the steps or levels. When kids first arrived, they were called newcomers, and the goal was to graduate to become an oldcomer. If you succeeded, your reward was to be put in charge of other children. Newcomers were not allowed to move around the facility without an oldcomer holding them by the belt or belt looping them. This meant no privacy even in the toilet. Oh, meant no privacy. Not in the toilet, not in the shower, nowhere. Belt looping didn't just make kid-on-kid violence possible. It actively encouraged it. Having kids supervise and restrain other kids was illegal, yet it must have been efficient, financially speaking. You don't need as many paid staff when you've assigned your wards to police each other. The result was a Lord of the Flies-like atmosphere. With terrible hazing rituals and near constant physical and sexual abuse. Though boys and girls were not supposed to speak to one another, I befriended a slight, pale boy named Chris. When older, bigger boys arrived in the program, they singled him out from across the room. Rape kid. After they did their worst to Chris, I'd hold his hand and tell him I was sorry. Looking in his flat gray eyes, I was worried a part of him was already dead and the rest was not far behind. The girls treated each other just as savagely. A gang of the meanest ones accosted a girl I knew, holding her down and molesting her with some sort of object. That wouldn't happen to me, I vowed. I'd been hypervigilant since long before Growing Together. I saw no reason to change. Peril was everywhere. Staff members were either ineffectual or cruel. There was one guard, a white guy with curly blondish hair and a burnt orange tan, that we called the Enforcer. He loved to put his hands on kids and throw them to the floor or against the walls. Rosalind, meanwhile, was a Hispanic chick with a power complex. She did to our psyches what the Enforcer did to our bodies. She seemed to enjoy humiliating us. The food was disgusting, and the dinner menus never changed. Mondays, tacos. Tuesdays, Salisbury steak. Wednesdays, we served a nasty mushroom soup. I hated mushrooms, but I forced myself to eat it because I knew that kids who didn't clean their plates were made to sit at the table until they obeyed, chewed, and swallowed. One Wednesday, though, I just couldn't do it. The smell of the watery gray liquid made me gag. Eat, Rosalind yelled. So I tried, but after a few spoonfuls, it wouldn't stay down. Uh, so I vomited into my bowl. Rosalind's face broke into a sadistic smile. No problem. Now eat until that bowl is empty. What goes on here stays here, staff would often say. The longer I spent at Growing Together, the more I understood why. Rules were rigid. Boys had to keep their heads shaved, nearly bald. Girls, though, weren't allowed to shave their legs or underarms. It was as if the staff wanted to mark us to make us look as abnormal on the outside as they told us we were on the inside. Strip searches and pepper spray were the methods they used to keep us in line. The squalid building, meanwhile, was overrun with cockroaches and rats. Nonetheless, every Friday, parents gathered in a large, well-lit room that hid all that. Friday was open house night, and I remember, well, the dog and pony show the administrators put on. Imagine 50 adults at one end of a banquet room, and their problem kids herded together at the other end, all dressed in those matching navy and khaki uniforms. Before the open house began, parents and children were separated by an accordion-like room divider. But when the meeting was called to order, the partition was pulled back, music burst from the loudspeaker, and the kids were made to sing. We knew that if we refused, we'd be sent to the white room. I'm a promise, I'm a possibility, we chirped, sounding more like nursery schoolers than troubled and abused teens. I'm a promise with a capital P. I'm a great big bundle of potentiality. And I am learning to hear God's voice. And I am trying to make the right choice. And I'm a promise to be anything that God wants me to be. Staff would then hand a microphone to one of the moms or dads and ask them to describe their child's misdeeds. Chosen parents would recite their lists: drug abuse, petty theft, fistfights, violent outbursts, whatever, without a nod to whatever role they might have played in their kids acting out. It was like watching prosecutors during a trial, except that the microphone was finally handed to the accused. He or she was not allowed to mount a defense. Instead, we were expected to use our time to confess. Only by confessing could we move up in the hierarchy that divided the punishers from the punished. That's a snapshot of what happened inside the facility during the day. Other abuses occurred each night when we were shipped off to sleep at private foster homes endorsed by Growing Together administrators. Typically, these were houses owned by parents of children enrolled in the program, and most accommodated 5 kids at a time. All these homes, mine included, because my parents sometimes took in kids, had been renovated to meet Growing Together specifications. Pictures and mirrors were removed from the walls so there'd be no glass to break. Kitchen knives were hidden, bathrooms were stripped, leaving only the sink, toilet, and bathtub. Usually the windows and doors of the bedrooms where we slept were rigged with alarm systems. Bedtime was 10 p.m., and we couldn't exit our rooms until the next morning. That meant no bathroom visits. We had to hold it or pee in buckets. There was one ritual at Growing Together that I embraced. Before bed, we were expected to write in our journals. Staff called these entries moral inventories. They told us to catalog bad things we'd done, painful things we'd endured, and how we'd been affected by both. The more you confessed, the higher up the hierarchy you were allowed to move, which meant more freedoms, and the right to go on the toilet unsupervised, say, or attend school outside the facility. Inventories that included sexual abuse or underage sex were particularly encouraged. Given these incentives, lots of kids made stuff up. I, however, didn't need to lie. I had plenty of awful experiences to draw on. In the beginning, I'd hoped that after reading my accounts of past abuses, the staff would take steps to punish those who'd hurt me. Maybe the boys who raped me in the back of that car could be held to account, but I soon realized that wasn't the purpose of our journals. The purpose was to gather information that the staff could use to keep us inmates in check. I've kept a journal on and off ever since. At times, I felt as if the act of recording what's happened, and now how I feel about it, is the only thing keeping me sane. But back then, in that horrible place, the journaling, not the cockroaches or the mushroom soup, is what ultimately broke me. To have chronicled in blue ink on white paper even a few of the atrocities I'd suffered and to have nothing done about them. Counselors told me they had alerted the police about my rape allegation, but apparently the boys said I consented to the threesome, so no charges were filed. That's what made me see the truth. At growing together, my pain was nothing more than a sick form of currency, valuable only if I used to climb the program's supposed ladder of achievement. Once I figured that out, I reinforced my psychic brick wall. See? There's no point, I scolded myself. Nobody cares. Fuck the world. I responded by running away, over and over. Sometimes I fled from the cars that delivered us from growing together to our overnight lodgings. The moment the door locks popped open, I'd make a break for it. That was by far the easiest way to escape. Otherwise, I waited until I got inside one of those fortified foster homes with their deadbolts and their alarms, and I'd find any sharp object and hold it to my throat, threatening to kill myself. More often than not, the parent host would crumble. Who needs the hassle of a dead teenager in their kitchen? So they'd throw open their doors and let me run into the night. I would then be free, sort of, until I was caught and returned to growing together. I was usually disguised. I usually disguised my identity when I was on the run, introducing myself as Rachel, my runaway name, to anyone who asked. I wasn't hard to track. The facility staff had figured out where I liked to loiter and beg for change. The local Dunkin' Donuts was my spot. Eventually, they'd find me and take me back to the White Room. But the next chance I got, I ran again. This is just some of what I'd been through before I'd met Eppinger. Perhaps it helps explain why I so readily got into a limousine with an old man I didn't know. It wasn't just that I'd been brutally raped a few hours before, barely fleeing with my life. No, I had felt worthless for years. Sometimes I worried that what the counselors at Growing Together had made me say was true. That I was a whore, a slut, a druggie. And even if I were all those things, I hadn't always been. Once I'd been a daughter, a sister, a beloved little girl. I hated to think about that, but thinking about it was crucial. I see now, remembering a better time, the time when I had value, may have been the only thing that kept me from giving up. Okay, notes time. Notes time on. Notes time on chapter 2. Chapter 2. Uh, going to the. I'm trying to think about what else. What else is there to say about chapter 2? Yeah, that makes sense. There's still, things like that. Um, Troubled teen things. There's been several TV series and documentaries and stuff now. Hmm. Looking at 7 of these chapters in part 1, and then almost 7 there, more than 7 there. Other man. See, that's very interesting. And then the note. Yep, okay. Let me see here. Ready. Where's my water? I need my water. I'm gonna keep doing this. I need to turn on the fan because I'm dying. Oh, okay. That's something. Oh, I also. Hi, Silas, my dog. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Let's go. Let's go. Oh, Silas boy. Oh, Silas boy. I'm not looking at it. I'm not looking at it. Alrighty. Alrighty. Hi. Hi, Crimbone. Hi, Silas. What are you doing? You want to come up? A little bit light. It's like a little more light, but this is light. Silas, come here. Oh, boy. Yay, Silas! Ah! Oh, no, not on the power cord. Oh dear, my baby butt boy. Oh no, I was gonna try and show you, but oh no. What a boy. Trying to read this book. Rainbow! Get it! Hi, Silas! 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 Yeah! Yeah, yeah! Cribbin' scrabbin'. Cribbin' scrabbin'. This is how I'll keep my sanity. Oh, you left your maternity. Oh my god. Okay. Okay. I don't know how bad it is to hear. If you can hear the fan, how bad? Let's find out. This is chapter 3. Miss Virginia Lee. Yes, Grimbone. We're continuing. We're continuing. You want to come here? Oh, it's a baby. Okay. In my earliest memory, my Uncle Speed, that's already good news, scoops me into his arms and sits me on the bare back of his favorite horse. I am 3 years old, and it seems as if I am a mile off the ground. I grab a fistful of the horse's mane, steadying myself. I love how it feels up here. But I don't get to stay for very long. Oh, boy. Poor Silas wants to go outside so bad. My earliest memory. Okay. Hi. Where are you going? Where are you going? What are you doing? What are you doing? My mother is worried that I'll fall, and she scolds my father's eldest brother for putting me in danger. My first horseback ride is brief, but it changes me. From then on, I'll be obsessed with animals, particularly horses. To hear my relatives talk, ours is a proud family of athletes, cowboys, and war heroes. Dad always likes to tell the story of how he and his brothers got their names. Their father, Fred, was a radio operator in World War II, but mostly he loved to be up in the clouds airborne. While serving in the 8th Air Force in England, Fred was a gunner on a B-17, and in 1945, when he was 26, he was awarded a medal for meritorious achievement. For my grandpa, Fred, that sealed it. When he came home to California, he and my grandma Daisy started a family. He insisted their sons' names reflect his passions. Speed came first, then Sky, my father, and finally Jet. My grandparents had daughters too, but they had normal names. Sandy and Carol. My dad and his siblings grew up in the 1960s and 70s in Sacramento, which couldn't have been more different from San Francisco, though it was only 100 miles away. While the hippies in Haight-Ashbury were dressed in tie-dye and embraced anti-war activism and free love, my dad's neighbors wore Wrangler jeans, held conservative values, and believed in hard work. My Uncle Jet, for example, became a square dance caller at the age of 8, and that's still what he does for a living. For his part, my dad liked to fix things with his hands. Lanky with an easy smile, my dad rarely went anywhere without his Stetson hat. My mom, Lynn, was more of a free spirit. She was born in 1960 to my grandmother, Shelley, and her second husband, a guy I never met. That marriage ended. Hi, Bruce, my cat. That marriage ended. Hi, baby boy. That marriage ended after Mom's younger sister came along 3 years later, at which point Shelley sent both her daughters to live with their maternal grandmother, Dee Dee, in Richmond, Virginia. A Vassar tennis team alum, my mom's mom was one of the first female tennis pros in the country, and she had no intention of retiring. In the late... Don't you do it, don't you do it? Intention of retiring. You're fine. Ma'am. Okay. Oh, poor little butt. Little butt. In the late 1960s, Shelley stayed close to her daughters, serving as head tennis pro at clubs in Virginia Beach and Richmond. But in 1970, Shelley moved 800 miles west of Chicago, where she'd grown up, to manage the Midtown Tennis Club. I'm not sure my mom ever got over being left behind. Even from afar, Shelley imposed a lot of rules on her daughters. Both my mom and her sister, also named Virginia, were required to keep their hair bobbed short, which my mom hated. Their grandma Dee Dee came from money, meanwhile, and appearances mattered to her. She was hell-bent on turning her two granddaughters into well-mannered Southern belles. Then Shelley married husband number 3, a ranking tennis player named Bucky Walters Jr., and moved to Florida to join the tennis club of Palm Beach. At that point, she'd sent for her daughters, but after they had arrived, my mom made clear she wasn't interested in having a stepfather, let alone an older stepbrother. Bucky had a son from an earlier marriage. Mom and Shelley argued constantly. My mom had always been headstrong. Whoa. Da, da, da. Since her mom hadn't seemed to care much about family until now, so my mom ran away, hitchhiking all the way up to San Francisco. Hitchhiking all the way to San Francisco from Florida. I don't know much about what that trip was like, but I do know that she started calling herself a hippie and let her red hair grow long and wild. By the age of 16, she'd gotten married to an army man named Craig, and they'd soon had a son, Danny. By 17, Mom was divorced and sharing an apartment with another single mom. She had her hands full, but somehow she finished high school. Then one afternoon, while buying Danny a soft serve cone at Dairy Freeze, Mom met Sky Roberts, a cute auburn-haired boy in a big hat. They were both smitten, or so I've always been told. Sky loved Lynn's shiny mane of hair, her freckled skin, and her big toothy smile. Lynn liked how Sky swaggered when he walked, and how he wasn't put off by her already having a kid. Later, my dad would grow a beer belly and develop to what I come to think of as the Roberts nose, wide at the base and bulbous at the tip. But back then, he was long and lean, with a close-cropped beard and mustache. Mom couldn't stay away from the start. Dad treated Danny as his own. He said he also wanted more children, which tugged at my mom's heart. Maybe she thought they could make a family that was better than the fractured one she'd come from. So in December 1982, my parents married at St. Peter's Lutheran Church in Elk Grove, just north of Sacramento. 8 months later, they had me, Virginia Lee Roberts. Everyone called me Jenna. Family legend has it that my arrival made my grandma Shelley want to reconcile with my mom, her estranged, her estranged eldest daughter, in a series of long-distance phone calls. She and my mother patched things up, and soon my dad, my mom, Danny, and I were speeding east in a used Winnebago we'd picked up for cheap. The first thing that struck me about Florida was the ocean. I'd never seen one. I love its salty smell. We stayed with Grandma Shelley in West Palm Beach at first, not far from the beach, and I soon discovered a lot about her. She wouldn't let us call her Grandma for starters, I guess because it signaled her age. We kids were to call her Gamma. What's more, she seemed to wake up with a Bloody Mary in one hand and a cigarette in the other. Gamma always spent peak tanning hours poolside at her tennis club, bronzing her already brown and leathery skin, playing backgammon with her friends. She kept a bottle of baby oil in her purse. But she had other quirks too. A clean freak, Gamma was the kind of woman who kept her furniture covered in plastic and who made me stand in the driveway when I brushed my hair. She didn't have a nurturing bone in her body, but I admired how she lived life on her own terms. Given Gamma's control issues, Mom never intended us to stay long under her roof. Soon my parents found a small three-bedroom ranch house on a dirt road in Loxahatchee, about 30 minutes away from West Palm Beach. Loxahatchee is prime horse country now, but back then it was known for its renegade residents, loose land restrictions, and exotic animals. Partly surrounded by citrus groves, Loxahatchee edged up against the last remaining section of the northern Everglades. Living next to something so wild, our new neighbors felt free to keep not only broken down school buses in their yards, but also iguanas, peacocks, alpacas, and emus. Years later, one neighbor would stash the body of an endangered panther in his garage freezer. That was Loxahatchee in the 1980s, untamed and off the grid. Our new house wasn't much, but my parents worked to fix it. Stretch out my leg. Oh my god, I'm dead. Woofty. Where is what is this? What is this? Okay. Mom planted sunflowers and daisies in the front yard. Dad seeded a lawn, built a shed, raised a barn, and me, in the daytime, I explored the woods that bordered our land. There were two kinds of cypress trees in our part of Florida, the pond cypress and the bald cypress, neither one of which resembled the Italian cypresses I remembered from Sacramento. These trees grew in areas saturated by water. I remember a neighbor explained that the bald cypress, a wispy breed, got its name because it lost its leaves in the winter. But I was more fascinated by how it looked when it flooded. These trees created specialized root structures, everyone called them knees, that grew out of the submerged ground, through the water up into the air, bringing oxygen to the canopy above. These cypresses were survivors. Some had been alive for 600 years, and I admired that. I also loved what I could see from the uppermost branches of our tallest slash pine trees, which are the kind that grow in swampy ground. I would ascend and hang upside down like a possum, laughing at the world flipped on its head. I got so good at climbing, my parents began calling me Peter Pan. I couldn't fly, of course, but I had the fearlessness and confidence of someone who could. A month after I turned 5, Mom put me in kindergarten at Haverhill Baptist Day School. Classes were only a few hours a day and were mostly intended to get kids used to attending school. But I still have the report card, which features a drawing of two smiling children, a boy and a girl, sitting together on the floor, both holding books open in their laps. And I remember the delight I felt as I learned to read that fall, and how amazed I was to learn there was a place called the library where anyone could go to borrow books free of charge. 5 months after I had enrolled at Haverhill in February 1989, my little brother, Sky Rocket Roberts, was born. I called him Skitty Bump, or just Skitty. When he came home from the hospital, my parents put his crib in my room, so I almost felt as if he was my baby. When he cried at night, I was the one who got up and comforted him. I adored Skitty. And as he grew up, white, blonde, brown-eyed, and handsome, good things began to happen. My mom worked briefly as a bank teller after Skitty was born, but she quit after being robbed at gunpoint. I understand now that the robbery must have been terrifying for her, but at the time it seemed as a boon to us kids. We were glad to have her around more. For his part, Dad began to find work doing maintenance and construction. My half brother, Danny, was a scrappy kid, even after getting one of his front teeth knocked out being rambunctious. He always seemed to lean into trouble, but he was my big brother and he looked out for me. More and more, it seemed Mom and Dad walked around with beer cans in their hands. Still, I was happy, and I thought my family was too. In those days, I was buoyed by the knowledge that my mom loved having a daughter. I still have the baby book she made for me, which is so jammed with photos I can barely close it. There's me, which perched on a chair next to a favorite tabby cat, me barefoot at the beach, shoveling sand into a bucket, and me dressed up as Snow White on Halloween. There's a lock of my hair tied with a pink ribbon, and Mom wrote monthly entries, each one addressed to me. My special girl, she wrote. I wonder why they're so upset. There we go. Are you happier now? Jesus Christ. Um, my special girl, she wrote. When my freckles popped out just like Mom's, she called them angel kisses, and insisted they made me prettier. So legit. Oh, you baby boy. Interesting. Interessante. Okay, well. And Mom trusted me completely with Skydie. One day, while playing in the sandpit under the treehouse Dad had built for us, Skydie tugged on my shirt. Sissy, he said. When I turned around, he pointed a snake slithering toward us. I wasn't particularly afraid of reptiles. At one point, I kept a lizard in a shoebox under my bed, filling a bottle cap each night so he had water. But something told me this viper was trouble. I grabbed Skydie and ran for the house, screaming. Mom came out just in time to see the deadly water moccasin slipping into the grass. Later, she said I'd saved Skydie's life. I loved our neighborhood. We lived in the second house on the left, on Rackley Road, just down the street from the Rackley family. You might think that since our dirt road was named after them, they'd be sitting pretty on the nicest plot of land. Instead, it seemed they'd sold off the best parcels around them, keeping the mangiest, muddiest piece for themselves. By the time we moved in, the Rackley clan were what people called hillbillies, rough as guts, with a lot of barking dogs but no front lawn. Our land had its own small pond with a tiny island in the middle of it, and after my father built a narrow bridge linking it to the nearest stretch of shore, the island was my spot. I spent hours there, reading, drawing, and daydreaming about how my life might turn out. One day, while I was lolling about, I spotted an alligator snapping turtle, as big as a truck tire, stick his head out of the water. I'd never seen a turtle that large, so of course I wanted to catch it. Mom said I should ask the Rackleys. They'll know what to do, she said, and they did. One of their boys, there were several, including one set of twins, put a hunk of meat on a hook tied to a string and tied to a string with a bell on it. 2 days later, when the bell started ringing, I watched in awe as the Rackleys turned to pull the bloody turtle out of the pond, its jaws snapping. Ooh. Later that night, later that night, there was a knock at our door. Yet another Rackley boy. He said his mom had made turtle soup if anyone wanted to taste it. I thanked him but declined. I'd already decided I wanted to be a veterinarian. Ever since I'd heard that taking care of animals was a job I got paid to do. I didn't want to eat that turtle. I was excited just to see the turtle's sharp beak and scaly shell up close. We kids never lacked for adventure. We'd build makeshift bike ramps out of boards and cinder blocks that sent us flying, but we somehow managed not to get too hurt. We prided ourselves on being able to handle whatever Loxahatchee dished out. One time, after Dad installed an electric fence on the property, we took turns seeing who could grab it and hold on the longest. Another time, Danny fell through a rotten roof where we were not supposed to be climbing and broke his arm. If you asked, we'd have told you we lived in heaven. Whenever Mom took us to visit her sister's kids in North Palm Beach housing development, we couldn't believe our cousins had to live in such a boring place. What do you guys do for fun? I asked, trying to not reveal how sorry I felt for them. My tomboy ways were about to be interrupted, though, by realities of starting elementary school. Maybe it was a holdover from her own upbringing, but my mom had very clear ideas about how she wanted her only daughter to appear to the outside world. Suddenly, I was forced to trade my jeans for frilly dresses that I hated almost as much as the brightly colored ribbons Mom insisted on tying into my hair each morning. Still, I loved first grade. My favorite teacher was Mrs. McGirt, who recommended I check out Charlotte's Web about a girl named Fern who, like me, lived on a farm. Like Fern, I was an early riser. I was eager to get a jump on the day. Like Fern, my family had dogs and goats and chickens, though no pigs like the adorable Wilbur. I loved that book. On the nights Mom tucked me in, I had her read it to me. On the nights when my parents were drunk and I put myself and Skydie to bed, I practiced reading it aloud, especially the end when Charlotte tells Wilbur about the wonderful life he will lead. This lovely world, these precious days. I adored the idea that Wilbur was so dear to Farmer Zuckerman that the little pig would never ever be harmed. Around this time, Mom made clear being a girl meant more than dresses and hair ribbons. I never balked at my chores with the animals, feeding them, cleaning their stalls, putting them in their pens at night. I'd spent hours teaching our goat, Cordelius, how to walk on his hind legs. But suddenly, my mother said I had to help her take care of the people in our family, too. My new jobs included setting and clearing the table every evening, then helping with the dishes, and vacuuming every room in the house once a week. Neither of my brothers had to take a turn. When I asked Mom why, she said girls need to learn things that boys didn't. You'll have a husband someday, she said, and you'll need to do this for him. It's funny to think about now because it's not as if my mother was a very good housekeeper. The inside of our house was often looked as if a tornado had just torn through, but the message was clear. We were both female, and I was going to shoulder some of her load. My family had its rituals. Every night we'd assemble around our coffee table for dinner, fish sticks, chicken tenders, anything that was on special at the local pantry pride. And the TV was always on, usually MASH, which I hated, or The Simpsons, which I loved. Every morning I packed my lunch and eventually Skydies before school, even though no one showed me how. I just smeared some grape jelly on white bread and put it in a brown paper bag. No biggie. By lunchtime, my backpack gave off a nasty smell as if something were fermenting inside. I envied the kids who brought lunch money for a hot meal, but without even asking, I knew that wasn't an option for me. In our house, what little money there was always seemed to get spent on my dad's whims, his latest pickup truck or construction project, either that or beer. When my dad decided he wanted something, though, he went out and got it. I was about 6 years old. I stepped off the school bus one day and encountered Dad standing in the road. I've got something to show you, he said, and the grin on his face said it was something good. He turned toward our house with me right behind him, and when we got within sight of the barn, I spotted her, a beautiful black and white paint. Her name is Alice, Dad said, nodding to the horse, who hadn't been there that morning. She's all yours. I was stunned. I approached her as Dad told me to, slowly, with my hand extended so she could nuzzle it. Looking in her big brown eyes, I saw intelligence. I couldn't believe I had my very own horse. From that point on, Alice and I were inseparable. I could have changed her name, I guess, but I didn't because it reminded me of Alice in Wonderland, a book I had adored. My Alice was gentle, patient, and easy to get a saddle on, though usually I rode her bareback. Skiddy was jealous. I had to reassure him that Alice would never take his place in my heart, but the truth was that my little brother, then barely a toddler, couldn't expand my world as Alice did. Every day when the final school bell rang, I'd hurry to the bus, counting the minutes until it dropped me off. And I had a longer walk home now. The school bus had been rerouted after a pig farmer drowned in the collecting canal at the end of our dirt road. The fourth person in a year whose car had rolled into the canal's swampy water. This county school board didn't want to risk a bus full of kids meeting the same fate, so now instead of delivering me right to the end of Rackley Road, the bus dropped me about an eighth of a mile away. I didn't care. I would run all the way home, sling the halter around Alice's neck, and off we'd go. Alice wasn't fast, and she wasn't slow, but she was perfect because she was mine. I delighted in the way she smelled, especially after a ride, and the way she'd wrap her head around me and hold me close as I brushed her mane. I couldn't wait to do the jobs that kept her happy, mucking her stall, putting fly spray on her. When I taught her to swim in our pond, we'd float and paddle together, just a girl and her horse, enjoying the same cool water. When we headed for the woods, she never startled or bucked. She was sensitive as well as smart. On her back, I felt taller, stronger. I knew she understood me, and I her. Without words, Alice was my ally, my protector, like Charlotte the spider was for Wilbur the pig. With her, I felt completely safe. I didn't yet know there were reasons to be afraid. Ooh. Now, I was 3. 3 was a bit longer. 4 doesn't look that long. I need water and to take notes on 3. Silly lady. Okay. I need water. That's that's just so much. Okay. Stereotypes that only Virginia has to clean and cook and not her brothers. Her was named Alice. Named alive, named Alice. Else, named Alice. Happy. What did she say at the last? What was that last thing she said there was? I didn't yet know there were reasons to be afraid. Okay. Didn't yet know there were reasons to be afraid. I kind of want to maybe get to like part one. Obey me. You kiss the flower. I sit for hours. Telling all the bluebirds. So silly bluebirds. Sometimes we just need a moment in between. Because this was before she said she had a reason to be afraid, so. Chapter 4. Less than nothing. Oh boy. Oh boy, yes. I mean, not oh boy, yes, but like, oh no. I still need water. Wow, wow, wow. Bluebird.